everyone. I'm Linda Nickell, and welcome to the Happiness Hour. Our goal here is to help us all connect, inspire, and create. Every week, I invite a speaker to share their photographic expertise with us, and a list of upcoming presentations can be found on my website at lindanickell.com. Under Happiness Hour, you'll find the links to previous sessions on our YouTube channel. So as life gets busier and you cannot join us live, you'll be able to catch every session on YouTube. So please hit that subscribe button. Erin Randall is my trusty sidekick, and you'll find her at admeloriacoaching.com. So say hello, Erin, and correct the pronunciation of your business for me.
So hello, Erin, and it's Ad Meliora Coaching, and it's Latin and it means to better things. So that's how we get around that. But well done. You're getting closer every time.
I keep butchering it, but I do try.
But you're getting closer every time. It's all good.
I'm getting, a few more times. So our guest tonight is Jama Pantel, a family portrait photographer based here in Austin. And as a freelance photographer, Jama's work has been featured by the New York Times, and she has been named Best of Austin's Portrait Photographer for the last 3 years. In tonight's presentation, Your Brand, Your Story, Jama is going to share with us the reasons that it's so important that you translate your story to images that will captivate your audience, and why branding is so important for anyone running a business, especially today when social media can play an important part in your success. The first time I met Jama was just a couple of months ago, and it was literally in my backyard. Jama and Erin used my garden as the backdrop for a branding session, so I got to see her in action. And I thought that this topic would be helpful for anyone that's thinking of starting or already has a business to understand why you need to not skip this step. And we're going to briefly hear from Erin about what her fears and expectations were and some of the things that were important to her as the client. So welcome back to the Happiness Hour, Jama. This is your third session, and it is really nice to have you here again. So before you get started with your presentation, would you just introduce yourself and take a minute to add anything that I may have missed in your intro?
Okay, so I am happy to be back. I am going to try to talk slower because I am known for talking very fast. This is a topic that I have been, I don't know if studying is the right word, but I know how important it is, and I am a good example of it. So in my presentation, I actually share a little bit of my story, which is part of my brand, and how it all ties into where I am tonight, here with you guys at Happiness Hour. So everything that I've shared leading up to this point got me here, basically. And it was all done as a test on my side, because if you have known me or talked to me, you know that I'm a very introverted person, and I don't like talking, and I don't like video. I am always on the backside of the camera. I did an experiment, ran an experimenting, sharing a few things about myself, and recognized how impactful it is and how important it is and how it has helped me in my business. So do we want to jump into it?
Yeah, I'm going to say this real quickly. When I first met you, and it was over Instagram, when I was looking for people to speak, and you were one of the first people that I reached out to. In fact, you were the first speaker when we started the Happiness Hour. And you were just like, oh, not so good in front of the camera, not really wanting to do it, but knew that you needed to do it. And in just we're at 9 months now, it's a huge difference, and it's a huge improvement on, your attitude and I can tell you've always enjoyed what you do. That is very, very apparent. But to see you do it with the confidence that you're showing now, it's great for me to kind of like see you from where you started and to where you are today. And that just tells me you're only going to get better. And the fact that you're willing to come back here and share your experiences with everybody else in the room, that hopefully some of the lessons you've learned are going to help them move their business forward. And for that, I want to thank you for putting yourself out there and coming back and sitting in the hot chair, as we call it. So just from me personally, thank you for doing this.
Thank you. And you're absolutely right. It's called faking it until you make it. I'm still faking it. I haven't made it. But here I am attempting to do it. And like I said, it started as an experiment for me to put myself out there and to force myself to put myself out there. We asked before too many of y'all joined how many people on here are working on their brand or have a brand. And a couple people raised their hand. And I think everybody on here probably should have a brand, because you are on social media, and that's how we found each other, is through our social media. And so whether you realize it or not, you already have some kind of brand presence out there. I think the majority of people here are photographers and are photographers of nature, photographers of some sort. And what makes you different from Joe photographer next door is not your ability to take pictures. It is your ability to translate yourself through those pictures and basically tell your story. People buy for specific certain reasons. I'm going to go ahead and bring up my presentation for you guys. So 10 types of values that you can offer, that brands or products that you can offer. So we are mostly product and or service photographers, right? If we're selling ourselves, our products, our images. And so what do those offer? So for me as a branding photographer or portrait photographer, I am trying to reduce the hassle for people. For the people like Erin, who will share some of her story, she doesn't know how to take pictures of herself to translate her story, so she comes to a professional for that. For my family clients, I'm offering the nostalgia aspect, because as I'll show you in a second, that's part of my story. Our pictures offer entertainment. Through my business, I provide an opportunity to give back. A percentage of all of my sales goes to nonprofits, local nonprofits, if you will. And so many of these aspects around this wheel tie into my story personally. So I'll share that and how all of this ties into my brand and my business. So the reason people are my specialty is my grandmother. This is my grandmother here. And she passed away my senior year of high school. Her and I were very close. I just celebrated a birthday last week, and I don't think people realize how close we were, but when I share this birthday letter she wrote to me on my second birthday, I think it shares a very good story about how special I was to her, and she was that special to me in return. And one of my most prized possessions to this day is an image, a picture, a framed picture of my grandmother. When she was laid to rest, there was a family portrait of my family with her clasped in her arms, and that made a huge impact on me. And that is why I offer printed art to my family clients and don't just give digital files, because if this image of her that was taken on a slide was still on a slide, I wouldn't have it. And yes, I can go find a slide projector, but that's a whole other story. No. So art is the way to go. And she is why I focus on people and her sharing pictures and images of people, because they tell stories, and stories is what it's all about. So y'all also know about me that I love to travel. So these are my stories that I share across my social platforms. So you'll see my travel images, clearly my family, my mom, my sister, and us in Greece last year. So you know this about me, and all that ties into it. I'm a bluebonnet stalker. I have been stalking bluebonnets for the better part of about 30 years, and I was finally recognized for that. So if y'all notice, every spring my feed turns to various shades of purple for the bluebonnets, and that is how the New York Times found me, was just me posting on social media and me talking about my obsessive passion for stalking bluebonnets and sharing those locations, but also educating folks to not crush the bluebonnets and to leave them there. I have been known to do that for years. So I'm also a runner, and that's something I share freely, and I run a lot. And I know people who are not runners think I'm crazy, but being a runner ties into a huge part of my business and a huge part of my clientele. I travel for races. I go to Hawaii for races. I go to South Padre. I run in Austin here at home. And through that, I have met some pretty incredible people. And I'm lucky that I've been able to meet some pretty incredible people. I have become a race ambassador for a local race here in Austin, Run for the Water, that provides running or clean water to the people of Burundi, through my love of running and sharing my love of running across my social platforms, and me sharing that as my story. And through that, about 5 years ago, I ran a race in Key West, Florida. I ran the half marathon in Key West, Florida. Travel to run. I'm telling you, I do this a lot. Ran Key West, Florida. And I met this guy. Well, this guy. He is the founder of the Run for the Water here in town, here in Austin. He's a local race coach. And I was asked to take some images of him, some pictures of him, to help share his story. And y'all might have seen me, if y'all follow me on social media, push this race and stuff like that. Gilbert was a star athlete in his hometown in Burundi, Africa, with offers to run at D1 schools here in the States. His senior year, genocide started in his country and war broke out. And he and all of his tribe classmates at his boarding school were killed. He wasn't killed. Every single one of his tribe classmates were killed. They were either chopped to death by machetes as they were pushed inside a building. Those that were still alive when they made it to the building were lit on fire, including Gilbert himself. Gilbert buried himself under his classmates with 40% of his body burning the entire 8 hours. He was hidden under his classmate, waiting for the noise outside to die down. He used the bone of a classmate to cut a hole out the window and escape. He decided to make the escape with his feet first instead of his head first. He thought if he went with his head first and somebody was out there, they would chop his head off. So he led with his feet. And so the burns were all over his feet and his head was protected. His feet, his back, and arms. So he has got scars over 40% of his body. And he escaped via running. And running is and he was the only survivor of this. And he ran a good 20 some odd miles to a camp to escape. And his whole story revolves around run with joy, because nothing is as bad as his story from anybody I've heard. And he always has a smile on his face. So we wanted to tell the story with that smile. His smile is known to everybody in the running community in Austin, from high school to elite athletes. He didn't run at a D1 school. He ended up here in Texas at Abilene Christian, and on his scholarship there. And he was invited to carry the Olympic torch in 1996. He never made the Olympic team. He was able to train with the Olympic team, but he was still too burned and too scarred from being lit on fire. But he never let that hold him back, and he continued to run with joy because he was alive. And me being invited to share that story just through my love of running is pretty incredible. And I got to introduce him to another runner who I have also done brand images with, Gary here. And I'm going to share Gary's story as well, and a lot of images with Gary, because he does exactly what you should do with these images when you take personal branding images. And these were just a couple of the behind the scenes that both of us were able to use, because you see me in the background of the image. So we took some for him and for my social. Gary here was a 400 and something pound man, never run a day in his life, had alcoholism, every kind of problem you can imagine, and then had kids and decided he wanted to be alive to watch his kids grow up. So he got off the couch one day and walked as far as he could. His first walk he didn't even make it down the block. Gary is now a 100-mile ultra marathon finisher. So he went from 400 pounds to a 100-mile ultra race finisher, and he's pretty impressive. So, like I said, he and I came across each other on social media during the race in Florida. I was complaining because I had a horrible race time because I didn't place. And that was my biggest problem in the world at the time, was not placing, because the headwinds were 40 miles per hour. And so I was just complaining. And Gary made a comment, and I'll never forget it. And I don't think I've ever complained since then, about you should be proud of yourself if that's your biggest complaint, you not finishing in the top 5. There's a lot worse things in the world. And I started up a conversation with us. And then he posted a couple years later about what he was trying to do, and it had an ugly image attached to it. And I mentioned to Gary, I said, you were open and honest with me about my complaining. Let me let you know your pictures are holding you back, and you need some better pictures to tell your story and what you're trying to do. Gary hopped on a plane and flew here to Austin, Texas. And we spent 2 days together, I don't know, probably 30 miles together, getting his pictures. And he does an incredible job using these pictures across his platform. So if you're familiar with the ultra world, belt buckles are huge. We always wanted to include belt buckles in the images. These are things that you find out about a person and their story and what you're trying to translate. So he does the side-by-sides of him now and where he was, to share his story. He puts inspirational quotes with his pictures, to share his story. Different looks, different facial expressions, and leaving room on the side to input stuff. So all of these are important when you're taking images to share your story. He is one of the most upbeat guys you'll ever meet. Has the best facial expressions, has more energy than anybody I've ever met. And so his facial expressions were huge. That was something we wanted to incorporate. His high energy was huge, something we wanted to incorporate and tell his story. So all of these shots you see were planned out for a specific reason. And there's a lot that goes into it. And when we get closer to Erin's session, we'll tie into that and how these questions that you ask to get to know your brand, digging deep, that all ties into each other and it all comes full circle. And if you know anything about running, it's not always easy. Sometimes it downright sucks, especially for someone like Gary, who started at 400 pounds. It's not easy. Me being a college athlete, it always seemed easy to me. So the not easy part to me was not placing. And I recognize now, after talking to so many of these other people, how trivial my complaints are. And it really puts me in my place. And so they want images like this to show that it's not always easy and it's not always smiles. It downright sucks and you don't get what you want to do. So it's hard. Different looks that you can take and combine. This one here is not mine. The rest are mine. That you just combines to tell a full story. Same thing, like I said, words to tell your story. You always leave space around your images to tell your story.
Jamie,
Sure, you are. Not
Jamie.
always easy. It's hard sometimes. When you are photographing images or putting images, always keep in mind spaces for logos. That's part of your brand. That's part of your story. Your quotes you want to use. Everything ties in there. So you always want to keep in mind what the bigger picture is and what you're looking for in your story and your brand. He's got logos on his shirt. His brands Run Epic. We get pictures of those so he can tell that story for himself through his brand. Obviously, he's a runner, so we get the running images. I said he was high energy. He does this all the time. He does this at the finish line after running 100 miles. He still has the energy to jump up like this as he crosses the finish line. So this is a classic Gary shot. And of course, we had to make sure we capture it. Again, he was working on becoming a coach, a speaker, and a writer, author. He finally published his book this past week with the images that I took for him in there. Running away, he's a coach at different athletic clubs. This is his favorite person he likes to quote. So most of his quotes are either his personally or this guy. but we shot specifically to leave room for these quotes. Like I said, leave room for quotes. He's been compared to this person on his weight loss journey, so we wanted to make sure we captured an image like this of him in a similar pose. So it was planned so he could do a side by side like this. So a lot of planning goes into your story. You have to know deep in your core what your story is to be able to translate it to something like this. Gary has traveled across the states and internationally, sharing his story. He's lived out of his car to make it happen, to make it work. Been homeless basically to make his dreams come true. And that was one of the things we were trying to share, that he's not afraid to spread his wings and fly to make his dream happen here. Like I said, he did this for his sons to show them that they could have a better life. And so we used some of my branding images that I took for him with where he started. Basically ties in and tells the whole story, his whole story. We found this blank bumper sticker on the side of the bridge. He's like, this is great. And I was like, yeah, this is totally great. You can put whatever you want in here. And so again, planned image. Same thing here. Leave some space and you're going to be pointing to something. Planned image, so you can put whatever you want in here. So all of this was discussed over the phone before he got here, sitting down at Magnolia Cafe, because when you come to Austin, you've got to eat at an Austin place to get to know him and get to know exactly the story he wanted to tell. And it took me asking hard questions and him trusting me enough to capture his vulnerabilities, his trials, as well as his extreme highs. I've been at the finish line at the 100-mile race because I paced some other friends at the same race he did. So I've been around him for those highs. And I've also been there when he didn't make it and when he DNF'd, disqualified, and didn't make it. So I've been there for all of them. And like I said, finally he reached his goal and published his book this past week with one of my images on the jacket cover. So I thought his story was a good one to share, because you can see how it comes full circle from where he started to where he is now. And him trusting me to share that story. This was the first full personal brand session that I was able to do. I asked him, like I said, all of these hard questions. All of these hard questions sat in a folder on my computer for, 3 years before I asked myself these hard questions and put myself out there for you guys. And that's when Linda and Erin and everybody approached me. Erin, as we know, is the queen of hard questions. And so me asking Erin hard questions about her brand was putting her in the hot seat instead of me. And so I came to her with a set of questions. What do you want people to think of when they see your brand? What are you trying to tell? What's your story? What are you willing to share? What are you going to put out there? There's so many things. What words best describe your brand? Who is your audience? Who are you speaking to? What tone are you speaking to them in? So all of these questions tie into the images we are capturing for her. Erin's easy with her words. If y'all know Erin, she has her word for every year, and she's got those words perfectly laid out. So we capture those words. Erin has a scar. Erin doesn't like sharing the scar, but she does, and got vulnerable and shared her scar for some pictures. Erin is awesome and left some space for something like this so she could add it in there and tell her story, to show her enthusiasm and excitement for this. And as y'all know, Erin recently put out her very own product herself for the first time. And so we got together. I asked her these hard questions to help her launch this. And so that's where we are now. We can let her share a little bit of her story, and then I can go back in and share a little bit more how I've got a bunch of websites up for people that are using my images to share their brand and share their story. And so we can wrap up with that after Erin goes and talks about her experience.
Okay, that's perfect. So Erin, before you start, let me just say, if you guys have any questions, go ahead and throw them in the chat and I'll make sure that we get to those before Jamie closes. So Erin, why don't you come on, put your little face on the screen.
I am here, don't worry.
Okay, and introduce yourself and your company, your business. And
You
then,
just want me to say that word again.
I do. I'm going to trip you up and see if you can mispronounce it. But basically, tell us where you started with your business, and then how did you determine that you needed to package it in a way that you could get it out there and have people, respond to it? So,
okay. Well, technically, I started my business right around a year ago in 2019. But I knew that I was going to be in Tanzania the month of January. So I really didn't get things going until February of 2020. In other words, just in time for the pandemic to roll around. And I was starting to land some clients, but things were just kind of moving along slowly, as they do when you start a business. And then Linda started the Happiness Hour. And all of a sudden, I had access to all these people who were photographers and knew about things like lighting. And so I approached Jama almost straight off, and I was like, hey, can we talk about some of the equipment that we would use when working from home? And we put a tutorial together on that, and it's still up on our YouTube channels and the like. But it was really as we started talking through the summer and business was starting to get bigger and I was starting to approach corporate clients, and knowing that I needed to have myself out there in a way where people could come to my site, get to know me a bit, because coaching is a really personal enterprise. And it's as much about the relationship that they develop with me as anything. That's often the gateway in. And it was, as summer wore on and I began developing magnesium, that I'm like, oh, I really need some different help. And, working with Heather and getting a logo up, that is a story for a different day, because that was one of the first things that we did. But when I got back to Texas in September, I already had Jama on the line because I knew that we needed to get some branding work done. I needed it to be great, and I needed it pretty quickly. And that was when we really got started. And so Jama had me answer all these questions, and I was just like, I asked the questions, not you. I had to get over that. But that's when we went over and borrowed Linda's backyard for an evening. Was that the session where I was standing on a ladder, like yelling at your neighbor? No, that was a different one? Yeah, Linda's going to make that a Christmas card for everybody, by the way. So be on the lookout for that. But Jama and I spent, it was a few hours in the backyard. We were watching the light and everything, and I brought several different wardrobe changes. But it was one of the easiest experiences, to possibly have, being in front of the camera. It's not a place that I'm generally that comfortable, but it was fun. She made me laugh. She made me think about it. I knew that she was watching for the negative space, because she knew that I was going to need to use this work, not only on my website, but up on Instagram and, even potentially print. She showed you the photo of basically my neck and my chest, where I'm wearing that necklace with the word that I always choose for that year. But part of my story is that I had breast cancer 5 years ago. And so I have that big port scar. And is it my favorite scar? Nope. But am I ashamed of it? Nope. Because I've also had clients who come to me because they know that I really am a warrior who will survive, and I will get back up when I'm kicked down. Some of my clients actually brag on me to their friends, because they're like, well, you have a lifestyle coach. I have a coach. My coach gets shit done. And so that scar is part of my story. Jama and I are already in talks. My parents live up in Montana. I call it my summer residence because it's too hot here in Texas. But next summer, I'm taking Jama up to Montana with me for a bit, because we're going to get a lot more photos up there, between mountains and horses. There's so much more of my story that resides in that location than here. And we know that we need to bring that work in and, really incorporate that to make it just, instead of one small short story, let's write the entire novel. So that is what is coming there, because let's open up the possibilities. Let's not just limit it to one thing. Branding is hard for so many of us because we're so busy trying to get really good at whatever the thing is that we do for a living, whether it's, you gave the example of Gary and running, and it sounds like he's a coach as well, but whether, it's teaching or photography or whatever our passion is, that's where we spend our time, is getting good at doing that one thing. So for me, learning to market and brand is a completely different enterprise. And having those photos that are really reflective of me, they're a personal stance, a personal choice. It makes it all worthwhile, and it makes it a lot easier for me to use that work on my website. So in full honesty, I use both Linda's work on my website as well as Jama's. And Linda and I were talking earlier. I'm proud to point people to my website. I know that the user experience is great, and I know that the work up there is high quality. And it's because of the photography that it brings people in. And to be able to do that, especially so early on in a business, is huge. Is it the best time to start a business during a pandemic? Well, I'm here to tell you it's probably not the worst thing I've ever done either. It's made me more daring, more willing to try things. And, things are actually off the ground and starting to look pretty good for 2021. So yay for branding that's helping me do that. But yeah, Jama, so we're planning on June up in Montana for a few days. We've got lots of photos to take.
Yes, we do. And that ties back into the trust aspect. And I feel like anybody who's going to work with a brand photographer, or anybody who wants their brand to resonate, has to get to the core of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They have to understand themselves at their core. They have to peel back the layers. And quite honestly, I suggest going to Erin for that, because she is great at helping you peel back those layers. And I will be the first person to tell you, I know how hard it is. I don't like putting myself out there. I don't like putting my face out there. As I mentioned to some of y'all who were here early on, I was the photographer who didn't have my own picture out there for the longest time, and I got called on that. So it's very hard. It's very personal, but you are your brand, and your face is your brand in this digital era, right? And Erin is a great example of this. Her images that she uses that have her face on there, you can go to her social media, they get more interaction, they get more engagement, they produce. And so what we're trying to do as photographers, what's the ultimate thing we're doing? We're trying to sell our images, our service, our product, whatever we are in the business for. And to do that, you've got to share yourself and your story. People won't buy it because it's a pretty picture. Erin's a coach. How many coaches are out there? A billion coaches out there. They're not buying it because she's a coach. They're buying it because of who she is. People buy me as a photographer because of who I am, my story, what I'm willing to share. Like I said, it's hard. It's it's painful. You have to dig deep. But if you want to make it, you've got to be willing to do it. And it's personal branding to me is a big thing, but brands in general. Also, if you are in the market of selling products, you need to be able to convey those products in a way that speak to people. So I am also a product photographer for certain brands that don't necessarily have the owner in them all the time because they're selling products. So they're trying to sell the lifestyle that these products hope to give. And so that's what we're trying to convey, is a lifestyle, if you will, with these products. So I'm going to share a few websites, like I said, that have some images that I've taken. And these are just a handful of them that I pulled up pretty quick. There are way more out there. Sometimes when I watch TV, I'm like, oh, look, there's mine. Like, so they're everywhere, but I just pulled up a handful of them because they're ones I've done work with in the last, let me share my screen again. Okay. So this, like I said, is Gary's website, Outrun Your Excuses, where he uses the images across all the different things. He also was a sponsor for Ulta Running. And so one of the images we took, he just uses them across the website in all these different places and stuff. Same thing with Erin. As she said, she's got her bio page. She's got them all over Magnesium. The images are everywhere. Through my love of running, I've been invited to do ambassadorships of products that I like. During lockdown, this company needed more images. I'm one of their ambassadors, so I became the model and the photographer. And we wanted to use the bluebonnets in it because, like I said, I've known for my bluebonnet work. The lady who runs this company is out of Minnesota and is blown away about, what are those flowers you talk about every spring? They're so pretty. This bracelet's the color of them. And so she approached me specifically to get an image. So here I was, the model in lockdown, where we couldn't have people around and couldn't be working, but we could be outside at the park. So I set an image up for them. Through my love of running and fitness, I came into contact with Handsies, the owner of Handsies, and this is a lifestyle product where I've photographed the products for them as well as different lifestyles, and you can see them across the board on their website, all over their social media, including myself, because I'm one of the people who helps share their story. So when we take these brand images, the questions you ask that you want to be cognizant of is, what are they for? If they're for your website, you need a certain aspect ratio versus if they're for your tiny Instagram squares. So these are part of the questions that you ask for your brand. What are you going to do with these pictures? Where are they going to be displayed? Every single platform has different elements. LinkedIn profiles have a certain size. Pinterest profiles and images have a certain size. Websites do. So Facebook, Instagram, they all have different sizes. So if you're doing this yourself, it's stuff you need to know. If you're working with a photographer who offers all these services, I have edited down images to fit each ratio for certain people. So these are all things to keep in mind as you're working on your brand. And it's a lot of stuff. It really is. And then through Handsies, Supply Drop picked me up this summer. And again, it's a product based, but it's a lifestyle. And the lifestyle they're going for is, you're relaxed at home, especially during a pandemic, and you don't want to go to the grocery store. They use algorithms to predict when you're going to run out of laundry detergent, soap, different things around the house. And so they deliver these packages to your door based on an algorithm. So we got together, we lined up models, we lined up locations, we lined up all the products. I think we had about 15 people on our crew that day between 3 separate locations. A couple of the models were the same at each location, but we went into outfits. You don't want to be wearing the same thing in every picture, but sometimes you can only do everything in a day. So you go through wardrobe changes. So the look we were going for was more natural. So I said, okay, we want that white, clean space where need a clean stainless steel white kitchen. We made that happen. We want people in neutral colors. The only reason she's in this flannel is because she had already gone through all her neutral colors, and they're like, no, let's put a pop of color in this in case we're working on something else. So there's pictures all over their website and their social media. I don't know if they have it linked at the bottom. No, maybe not. They're an Austin-based company, so we wanted to make sure Austin was conveyed in these images. So we were at a condo in downtown Austin that had a view of the Capitol in the background, that had a view of the Frostbank Tower in the background, your typical iconic things. We specifically placed Austin products in the images, whether that be Yeti cups, Austin Monthly Magazine. I mean, all of this was planned out beforehand. Again, it was me asking these deep questions. This is a very high-tech company with very high-tech people. When I did my research, I was kind of blown away that they contacted me. But when they did contact me, they were blown away with my hard questions and the hard questions for me to get to the core of their brand. And I was able to do that on the questions. And that's why we've worked together now on 3 projects and have a 4th one coming up. And I didn't load up more images, but this was a very long day, a very long session. And through that, then we worked with another one of their marketers who was also a very popular Austin businessman who has done some pretty impressive things. And the story he was trying to tell, if you look at the images, it just looks like him and his girlfriend. So it looks like a couples session, but it's the lifestyle they're trying to convey. So it's him and his girlfriend sitting around playing guitar, playing dominoes, friends come over playing dominoes. So these were all the questions we asked. We want to make your life look like it's easy and carefree and fun because all of this stuff's handled for you. So it was asking these hard questions to get to the core of their brand to show that life's easy if you don't have to worry about the minutia in life of refilling your toilet paper and your soap and everything else. So like I said, the core of your brand is so important, and knowing to the core and asking those deep questions to get to what you're trying to tell. And you try to get 5 stories that you're willing to share, and you just share those stories over and over and over again. And you might sound to yourself like a broken record because you know your story, but people coming at you across your social media platforms, Linda's made this point before. I don't go around telling people I've been published in the New York Times. I say it very rarely until I met her, and now it's kind of plastered in more places. But to me, it was just kind of a thing that happened because I love Bluebonnet Pictures. But to other people, it resonates with them. And, oh, we found you because you were public. You know, we saw your story in the New York Times. Will you take our Bluebonnet Pictures type thing? So being willing to put yourself out there, put that story out there, share that story. The reason I sell wall art and not give away digital files is because my grandmother had prints of us and they mean so much. So I think that's the gist of what I'm trying to get to you guys. I stress and I harp and I feel like I'm preaching to y'all, but it's so important to get to know yourself and figure out those hard questions to relate your story and your brand. Let me stop sharing that.
Okay.
That's it, guys.
Okay. So I don't see any questions, so I don't know if we've scared everybody.
I know, right?
Or they're like, oh my God, I need to get some branding stuff. But, you made a point, and I want to emphasize this too, because I don't follow a lot of people on Instagram. I just don't. I don't have the time. But if you have a website, I'm going to go look. And that's mostly because there's a couple of things I'm looking for. And everybody in this room takes pictures. That's why we're all photographers. And after a while, it's like one picture is just as pretty as the next. But what sets you apart, in my mind, is you, your personality, your story. And that's why I think it's so important that, you have an about page and you have a photo of yourself so that someone that's just not just looking at your photos, but they kind of can put themselves in your mindset when they're looking at your work. And if you haven't done that, please go do that. Make that something that you do for the new year. And I know it is hard. I'm not real, none of us like to be in front of the camera. Well, maybe Aaron. Aaron really did pretty well hamming it up, but most people don't like it. It's uncomfortable. And as photographers, we take pictures of other people, and there's very few pictures of us. So make that a point to do that. So that being said, there's a couple of little things that popped up.
And you said something that I don't believe I mentioned, but that I wanted to mention with your personality, your tone. How are you going to talk to people? I talk to people in my business like I do in real life. I'm very casual. And it's a lot easier for me to do this one-on-one. I can talk to anybody one-on-one. I don't have a problem with that. It's the groups that I don't like. So in my mind, how I got started was like I'm talking to my mother. I'm going to use the tone like I'm talking to my mother, because in my mind, she's the only one reading my blog posts and everything else. So I'm going to just have a conversation with my mom. So your tone matters. So what are you trying to convey with your tone as well? So you're spunky, you're full of energy. Like I showed you in Gary's pictures, he's jumping around. He's very high energy. Like he always is like he's had 10 cups of coffee with a little side of crack, and he's got that kind of energy. So we wanted to convey that in his pictures, but that's what's conveyed in his words and his story and his tone across his brand too. And so tone and how you say it is just as important. Absolutely.
Right. And you know, the competition to sell prints, there's so many photographers. There's a bunch of us here in the room, but everybody's trying to sell a print. Everyone's trying to sell a workshop or a one-on-one tutorial, some type of product, and that's great. That's what we're trying to do, is make a profit so we can buy more gear. But you've got to give people a piece of you. Otherwise, it's just a pretty picture. There's not a whole lot other than that.
Yep.
And I think a lot of times people are buying your images because of you. They like you. They want to have something that you've created. It's personal. You've made it personal. So help them out by giving that, giving a little bit of yourself. So there is a question, Jama. Somebody's asking, will you share the hard questions that they can use for themselves? Is that something that you could post on your website and they can go look at those? Or is that something you've developed for yourself?
I've developed after a lot of education. And this is the thing with photographers. And this is the thing with photographers lack confidence, is what I've noticed. And people don't realize how much money we've spent on education, on gear, on education, on more education to get to where we are. And it's not something that just happened overnight. I am a sharer and I don't mind sharing everything. My questions change as I talk to the Aarons of the world. And so they are evolving and they are changing. I have a Word document basically that I create and turn into a PDF to send to people, but I keep it in Word because I'm constantly changing it. So I don't mind sharing the core questions with you guys, but you've got to change it to fit yourself.
Yeah. And I realize I'm kind of horning in, but a follow-up to that would be to echo exactly just what James said. This is, I think, an exercise. You will be better as a photographer by developing your own questions, because you're going to partially connect with people based on the questions you ask. And so using what worked for Jama may not necessarily work for you.
Yep.
So be mindful of that,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
she's absolutely right. Like I said, it took me a long time to get these questions, and I had them sitting on my computer for years because I'm like anybody else out there. I lack confidence, and it was easy for me to put myself out there with Gary because we had that running relationship and stuff like that. So when he asked which picture's better, I was like, quite honestly, they both suck. The lighting's awful in them. You need professional pictures if you're going to do this professionally. And it resonated. Like I said, he booked that flight to Austin and came down and got me. I've done pictures in Colorado with him and so something like that is easy. I can talk to Linda like that. I can talk to Aaron like that, and ask these questions. And they evolve because I have been talking to Aaron and to Linda and stuff. And so they've evolved and they will keep evolving, and yours will too. So.
Okay. So Robert's asking, have you ever written any brand standards for companies that use multiple photographers for their company?
No, every single brand that I've worked with or business that I've worked with are local or small. Where it's just one person and me, or a team of people and me that are local. And then they know somebody else who's local. So I have not worked with any of the big brands or big companies yet. They have all been individuals or local companies.
But they're coming. I can tell.
We'll see about that. Confidence, remember?
So this is a really good question from Susan. She wants to know, she says, I don't have a business. What can branding mean for her? What can it do for her?
It depends. What does she do? What does she put out there? What does she share on social media? Like what story is she trying to get across by her being there? Or is she simply there to stalk other people? So here come the hard questions. What, Susan, are you trying to do with your presence on social media, or if you've started a blog, or what are you trying to do with it?
Basically, it's like, you've got to know what your goals are before.
I would change that question slightly in terms of, Susan, who is it that you want to be? Okay. What sides of yourself do you want these photos to show to other people? And what is the story that you want to tell with what you're trying to do?
Absolutely. And like I said, generally speaking, everybody has the same couple of stories that they're comfortable sharing, and they repeat those over and over again. Like I said, I travel, so I share travel images. I run, so I share races or my runs during the day. So what are you comfortable putting out there? What are you trying to get out of it? Are you trying to gain likes? Are you trying to gain followers? Are you trying to sell something? You want to be a mermaid, and I can't see the rest of the question.
I want to be a mermaid. That may be an exaggeration, but not much of one.
Okay, you want to be a mermaid?
Some fins.
You know what? I love the beach. I'd be the perfect photographer. I can aerial you with the best of them, where she's coming up on that rock with that hair flowing. Erin's got the hair. So we are river. So you want to be a mermaid in a river? All right, let's go to a river.
Freshwater mermaids coming up.
Yeah. Shot of mermaids coming up. Yeah. So if you want to be a mermaid and you want to share your mermaid story, I would ask you, why do you want to be a mermaid? Dig deeper. The mermaid is a simple question. I can go take a mermaid picture of you. However, there's a deeper meaning to why you want to be a mermaid. So what is that? Was it because you loved Ariel as a child, like I did? Does it take you back to innocent Disney days? Because that's what Ariel takes me back to. And Ariel is my favorite mermaid, and I love The Little Mermaid, and it was my favorite Disney movie. So that's what I relate it to.
I'm going to interject because I know a little bit about Susan's backstory.
Okay, and I don't.
The San Marcos River is in her backyard.
Okay.
And she is a snorkeler, a diver. She spends a lot of time in the water, and she is photographing the stuff you find in there: fish, turtles, grasses. So I think that she wants to basically highlight her love and her concern for the environment of those waters.
Okay.
I love that. It sounds like Susan, bring in Jama.
Yes. You know? So I went to school in San Marcos. I know those waters. I know that they carry those salamanders that are only found there. I know that they carry the algae or what. I don't remember all the terms because I wasn't a scientist, but I hung out a lot at that river as a kid, as a college kid, and did a lot of studying there. So let me preface with this. You probably want somebody who has an underwater casing for their camera to get you underwater doing this. Yeah. So I don't know if you're a scientist and you study this for work. These are all the questions that I would be asking to dig deeper and learn more. Are you a scientist? Do you do this for work? Are you trying to convey that this is your career and this is what you love and you're happy here? Or are you trying to get a job elsewhere doing the same thing, but in a bigger body of water? So you're trying to put yourself out there to share this, or just to share, I'm happy, this is what I do, this is what I love. So you want somebody with an underwater casing for your camera, which costs more than the camera itself. So if they don't already have it, they're going to charge you a pretty penny. Or a GoPro or something like that. So
let me go to another Susan, and her question is, do you guide the clients with selecting wardrobes, colors, all those things that kind of... Yes,
those are part of my questions. Those are part of my long list of questions. So what are your brand colors, right? So if you go to any website across the board, they're going to have certain colors on there. So what are yours? Me, for instance, I keep everything classic, clean, simple, blacks, whites, and I've got a pop of pink because in the back of my mind, I'm a princess, right? Rose gold, if you will, not pink, rose gold. So it's blacks and whites and neutrals and clean classic colors, clean classic lines, that kind of, and grays and that kind of stuff. So that's what I try. Everything I wear is like black, navy, gray, white, and that's what you'll see in most of my pictures on my website. I think the picture I sent Linda, I think I'm in a white shirt with black pants. So that definitely ties into it. So for the supply drop, like I said, we had 15 models. Every one of them was instructed on what colors to bring, to wear, to do from head down to toes, because we had a lot of females on set. My hair's only down and fixed because I was coming on tonight. Earlier today, pre-shower, Jama, it was up in a messy bun and my curls were out everywhere. So I instructed to bring different colored headbands, ponytails, scrunchies, whatever you're going to do around your head. For Erin loves her scarves. Have y'all ever not seen Erin in a scarf, right? So
it's cold.
yeah, she's always cold. So we brought a bag full of scarves for Erin to change out her scarves, to keep that interesting. So yeah, absolutely. I instruct for your jewelry. I mean, just anything. What resonates with you and what are you trying to share? And we get to those questions, and
Purple is part of my story, so very important.
So I've always photographed her in purple. Yep, absolutely. So yeah, those are definitely part of the questions for sure.
So basically, before you even get your camera out, there's a lot of prep work.
Yes.
Conversations that are.
Yes, a lot. And this is what it's hard to convey to people. And I struggle sometimes conveying this. And it's the same way with my portrait clients. I do the same thing with them. What look are you going for with the images? What furniture do you have in your house? What are your color schemes in your house? What color are your walls painted? Are you a wood person? Or are you a modern person? If you're classic old school, you're probably going to want a nice framed canvas. If you're new and modern, you're probably going to want metal wall art. So much work happens on the front end that the back end is just the easy part, and taking the pictures is just the easy part. It's not just me picking up a camera for an hour and taking a picture and being done. There's so much work that goes into it.
So what kind of follow-up do you have with your clients afterwards? How do you know that you've hit their target?
So, and this is, I called Erin around 6 o'clock and said, Erin, can I use you as a case study for this? Because I go and stalk your social media. I know, and I do the same thing with Gary and Supply Drop and Handsies and everybody else who I've taken images for. And I'll go in and look at the engagement and which pictures engage the most for them. So for Handsies, Supply Drop, I'm not full year contract, but I do multiple shoots throughout the year for them. And we see what works and what doesn't work and what resonates and what people are interacting with, and what the ultimate goal is to make these people money. If I'm not taking good enough pictures to make them money, I'm not doing my job. So I am monitoring their socials and seeing what is resonating with their audience and what's working, and following up with that and like, hey, that worked really well. How can we replicate that in a different way?
Okay. So I'm going to get you to close this out. Any last final thoughts that you want to share? Something that you want to punch home to make sure they really get?
It all comes down to getting to know them. And this is perfect for any of you introverts out there. And this is why I like it so much, because I'm not talking about me. I'm asking you all these questions and I'm taking all these notes and I'm getting to know you. And that's right up my alley. Being an introvert, I want to tell me all about you. What are your favorite colors? What are your likes and dislikes? What makes you sad? What makes you happy? What are you trying to tell? So words, like I said, Erin's great with these words. What are these words? When people go to your website, what are the 3 words you want to pop in people's minds when they go to your website? You've got to know yourself to your core. You've got to know your story and know what you're trying to say. And I think with Susan, we've uncovered quite a bit just asking her these questions here pretty quickly. So yeah, that's what it is.
I think a lot of it is the hard work is being honest with yourself and just owning up to what you want, and then reaching out to someone to get them to help you get there. So,
which I don't do. And I started doing now, thanks to Aaron and Linda, who are my extroverted, sit on my shoulders and help me a lot.
I don't know what you're talking about. Erin is one of the quietest people I know. She's kind of shy, actually.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not really. I'm kind of shy too.
For the record, I actually identify as an introvert. I fake being an extrovert.
I do too.
All right. There is one
We're
question.
meeting homework.
There's one question in here, Jama, and then we'll close you out. Which came first to you, photography or branding?
Oh gosh, that's easy for me. I was a photographer long before I was a business owner, brand, or anything else. If you saw that very first image I shared of me and my grandmother, I sat around as a little girl looking at slide film with my grandma and looking at pictures and her telling me stories of people I'd never met, who were gone long before I ever got here. And so as little as I had growing up, I have no idea why my parents got me a Polaroid camera and continue to buy me film for those Polaroid cameras because that's expensive. And that was the one thing I guess they were okay with spending money on me for. I didn't get new shoes. I didn't get new clothes. I didn't get new anything, but I got a Polaroid camera in junior high. And I started peeling Polaroid film apart to see what was in there. Oh, there's chemicals in there, and that's how a picture develops. Oh, okay, good to know. I wonder what those chemicals are. So I was a nerd. We went to the library a lot. I'd look that kind of stuff up to see what chemicals go into making pictures. And I got to high school, and I went to a very small school where we had access to a lot of stuff, and I got in the dark room a lot, and I loved the smell of chemicals and stuff. So I have been a photographer for long before I was a business owner. So I probably learned how to shoot on a manual camera 25, 30 years ago and was in the dark room that many years ago too. So I was a photographer long before I was a business owner or brand or anything else. All of that education, and that was huge education, came well after the fact.
Thank you, Jama. This is your third session with us, and that's a lot of time that you've given me and offered to this group. So I truly appreciate it. So guys, you can find her at jamapantel.com. And on Instagram, you can find her business page at Photos by Jama Pantel. And before we wrap up tonight's session, I wanted to tell you about a project that Elaine Pruden and I've been working on, which is setting up a Happiness Hour community blog. So the idea is still kind of new, and we're working out the kinks, but our idea is to invite guest bloggers to contribute articles to teach, inspire, maybe motivate other people to try to look at something new or try something different. And we're hoping to get that rolling in mid-January. So if you're interested in submitting an article, we're going to post an invitation on my website, which is lindanickell.com, under the Happiness Hour blog. So if you have an idea that you'd like to share, please reach out to us at happinesshourcommunity@gmail.com. And we're off for the next 2 weeks for the holiday break, but we'll be back on January 6th with travel and editorial photographer Chris Zebo, who will be here to share his story in a session called The Art of Travel and Editorial Landscape Photography. So until next time, go out and create something beautiful. And I hope that we see you back here in January. So have a happy holiday and a very happy new year.